Hello, and welcome to the Gabriel Method Action Steps, Lesson Number 1. This program is all about taking action and applying the Gabriel Method principles to your life for a total transformation of body, mind, and spirit. So before you do anything else, take a moment right now to download this lesson's checklist. And now, let's begin Action Steps Lesson 1 with John Gabriel. Welcome, John.
Hi, Nancy. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Great. John, can you tell us what are the FAT programs and how did you discover them?
Well, the FAT programs are a survival mechanism that our body has to protect us against certain environmental threats that existed thousands of years ago, like famines and cold weather. So if you were in a famine thousands of years ago, there wasn't enough to eat, and maybe you were living outdoors and it was cold all the time, those are survival threats that cause specific chemistry in your body that alert your body to the fact that it would be really beneficial to eat, store fat, and have extra fat as a form of protection. So in that environment, fat would protect you against not having enough to eat, but it would also protect you from the cold weather. So fat, and this is a really important message and essential to the Gabriel Method, Nancy, that fat is a form of protection. Our body uses it as protection. Now, if you were in those type of environments where you're having that type of threat, you would have a stress response in your body. The stress response would cause chemistry in your body, a specific type of chemistry, and that chemistry would turn on these fat programs. Now, the fat programs are basically designed to make us fat whenever possible. So certain changes happen in your biology when these fat programs get activated. You become hungrier, your brain stops listening to your stomach when you're full, so you eat and eat and eat till you can't eat anymore. You crave more fattening foods. Your metabolism slows down, and your body goes into this kind of perpetual fat storage mode where you lose the ability to burn fat, and whatever you do eat gets stored as fat very, very easily. So when you combine all those things together, it's like a switch that puts your body into fat-making mode, and it's very, very hard to fight. And the conventional paradigm is that we can somehow beat this through willpower. It's not the case. You can fight your body in the short term, but you can't fight your body in the long term. And your body can fight you all the time. And many people, in fact, most people that are listening to this right now have lived through this experience where they've tried to fight their body so many times. I lived through this experience where I tried to fight my body and I lost time and time again. And it wasn't until I stopped fighting and started understanding these fat programs and working with it that my body actually started to lose weight. Now, the important message here, Nancy, is that even though in today's environment we don't have famines and we're not living outdoors in the cold, so we don't have those stresses, we still have environmental stresses today.
Yes.
And those environmental stresses can cause chemistry in your body. In fact, every stress that you have, whether it's mental, emotional, physical, or energetic, every stress you have causes some type of chemistry in your body. Now, sometimes for some people, the stresses in our lives cause the exact same chemistry as a famine. So what happens is, for example, your cortisol levels get elevated, your body becomes insulin resistant, certain pro-inflammatory hormones get elevated, your cholesterol levels get elevated. All of these things happen in a certain coordinated sequence that's the exact same as the stress response as a famine. And what happens basically is your body gets tricked into activating these fat programs. Now, when your body gets tricked into activating these fat programs in a land of all-you-can-eat excess empty calorie foods, it's a recipe for disaster.
Right.
And in fact, it's a disaster that, unfortunately, the majority of the people living in the U.S. and in Western civilizations are living through right now. Over 60% of adults in the U.S. are overweight, and this is the direct result of the fat programs being activated.
Yes.
So we have stresses in our lives now, and I can talk about them now if you want, what the stresses are that can activate these fat programs.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about this. The mind-body treat-the-cause approach that you've developed is really very different from other methods we've all heard about or tried. Usually the focus is on behavior modification, specific foods, and extreme exercise. And I know that you actually believe that diets don't work at all. So help us understand why that's the case, why there are so many diets, and more importantly, why a holistic approach is the only real solution.
Well, simply put, diets don't work because they activate your fat programs. I mean, it couldn't be more simple than that. You see, if you remember, our fat programs are a survival mechanism to protect us against famines. So when you go on a diet, you've artificially created a famine, so your fat programs get activated to protect you against this artificial fake famine. Now, you may lose weight in a diet, the same way you might lose weight in a famine or starving yourself or any type of situation like that. But what happens is these fat programs get activated, so you end up going to war with your body. So you lose 5 pounds, but then all of a sudden your metabolism slows. And now you're on a diet just to keep the 5 pounds off. You're not losing weight anymore because you've now slowed down and you're tired all the time. So your body's fighting you. And then you have cravings all the time. And eventually you have this big binge. And when you finally do give in to those cravings, and you do have to give in to those cravings sooner or later, the same way you'd have to give in to sleep sooner or later if you were seriously sleep deprived, you will give into those cravings sooner or later, and then your body will store all of that as fat, and then you'll end up 5 pounds heavier than when you even started the diet because your body is basically saying, if there's famines out there, I want this extra 5 pounds that I had even before the famine was there to protect me. So that's why diets don't work, and that's why there are so many diets out there. Because if diets work, there would be one diet, maybe two. Everybody would go on it, everybody would lose weight, and that would be the end of it.
And John, are there studies that, support why they don't work? Are you aware of any?
There are so many studies that demonstrate that dieting will cause you, and people that do diet on a chronic basis will be heavier in the future. 3 years down the road, they're more than 3 times more likely to be overweight if you're dieting. So there's no question that the evidence is very, very clear, both chemically, scientifically, or empirically, that show that dieting doesn't work. So dieting activates your fat programs, and all the different types of approaches out there that are based on behavior modification will activate your fat programs because they all involve willpower and force, which causes a stress response that activates your fat programs. Now, my approach is strictly stress-based. That is, what are the stresses and chemistry that are activating your fat programs? When you take a stress-based approach, you have to look at it as a mind-body approach because every time you have a mental stress or an emotional stress, it's causing chemistry in your body. And I'm just looking at the chemistry and the stress response. So it has to be a mind-body approach. You have to look at the stresses in your life that are causing the chemistry, and you have to find out where they are, and they are physical, mental, and emotional stresses.
And from your book, John, I know that stress was a major contributing factor to your weight gain, but I've also heard stress can be a good thing. So what kind of stress makes our bodies react this way to gain weight? And are we talking about common stresses like busy working mom stress, or is it just extreme stress like bankruptcy or divorce?
It's usually the low-level chronic stresses that can cause you to gain weight, but it can also be the traumatic stresses, the sudden traumatic stresses. When it comes to mental and emotional stress, it's really how your body interprets the stress. If your body's interpreting the stress and causing chemistry as a result of the stress that's similar to a famine, which is causing a low-level elevation of certain hormones like cortisol and certain pro-inflammatory hormones, if it's causing that elevation in certain hormones, there's no question your body's going to react to it as a famine. So we've got mental, emotional, and physical stresses that can activate your fat programs. And I can just go over them now if you want.
That would be great, John.
Okay, so let's just start with the physical stresses. So physical stresses, as we mentioned, dieting will activate your fat programs, but also nutritional famine. We're nutritionally deprived of certain key elements like uncorrupted omega-3 fatty acids, a good source of protein, and live food that has life force vitality and biophotons in it. We're chronically starved for these things. If you look at a grocery store, aside from the outer perimeter where everything's refrigerated, if you look in the inner part, it's all processed, devitalized foods that our body really doesn't know how to digest. It doesn't have the nutrients we need. The nutrients have been corrupted. They're loaded with toxins.
Yes.
And they cause digestion problems and hormonal problems. And all of these things put us in a nutritional famine. So a nutritional famine is sort of like a regular famine in that you're not getting the specific nutrients you need, and those nutrients are not getting into the cells of your body, so you're starving on a cellular level. That's activating your fat programs. We also have digestion issues because of medications like antibiotics and chlorinated water, and a lot of the processed food we eat cause digestion problems in our stomach, and so we're not able to digest food. Even if we are eating foods that have nutrients in it, we've lost to a large extent the ability to digest those nutrients. So that's a stress that can activate the fat programs. Toxins can activate the fat programs. We're living in a world of toxins that are everywhere in our food supply, in our water supply, in our air. Thousands and thousands of chemicals that our bodies don't know how to process. Now, if we can't process and eliminate those toxins, we're going to store them in our fat cells. Our body will not let us burn fat because it's actually protecting us. It's using the fat. Remember, fat is always a form of protection, and that's the way you need to think. So in this case, the fat is protecting us from our own toxins. So we need to take an approach where we're lowering toxins, and we'll talk a lot about this. And every aspect of this over the next 6 months, we'll put together strategies for dealing with this. So toxins can activate your fat program. Certain artificial flavor enhancers like MSG and artificial sweeteners can cause chemistry in your brain. There's neurotransmitters in MSG and artificial sweeteners that act as a switch that excite the part of our brain that activates our fat program. So again, not calories in or calories out, not willpower or discipline, simply you're eating a chemical that's switching a trigger in your brain that's activating your fat programs. So these are simple things that can cause it. Certain medications can cause your body to activate the fat programs. Then there's mental and emotional stress, chronic stress of just trying to make ends meet, the stress that you just mentioned of being a mother and being overworked, worrying about finances, feeling disconnected from the world. These chronic day in and day stresses cause chronic changes in our chemistry that activate our fat programs. Then there's certain traumas that activate our fat programs that actually cause our body to react and use weight as a form of protection. I call this emotional obesity. But when you've suffered a trauma and your body feels like it needs to protect you from the outside world, sometimes it uses weight as a form of protection, frequently in abusive situations, attacks, or traumas like deaths, divorces, life-threatening situations, lifestyle-threatening situations, like a loss of a job. All these things can cause a trauma in your body. Now, if you've got a trauma in your body that makes your body feel like you need the weight for protection, that needs to be addressed more than anything else in the world. Because if you don't address that, your body will continually fight you to hold on to the weight because it actually thinks it's trying to protect you. What you need to do on every level, physical, mental, and emotional, is communicate to your body that you do not need the weight as a form of protection. By nourishing your body, feeding your body, eliminating toxins, managing stress, dealing with traumas, reprogramming the association from the trauma that fat is safe and making your body think that thin is safe. And we have specific visualizations for that. And all of these things, systematically, by doing this, you're turning off the fat programs, and then your body becomes sort of naturally thin. When your fat programs go off, get turned off, you're not hungry. You're not as hungry anymore. And I talk to people, and they sometimes say, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm just not hungry anymore. And I say, nothing's wrong with you. Your fat programs got turned off. Your body wants to lose weight now. Just let it happen. And then it happens all organically and naturally. You become like a naturally thin person. Your metabolism speeds up. Your body becomes more efficient at burning fat. Your brain starts listening to your stomach when you eat so that it registers the signal that you've had enough to eat. Everything starts functioning properly again. And that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to get everything to function properly the way it's supposed to be. And that's what we're going to be doing over the next 6 months.
John, can you talk a little bit about boundary stress? I'm curious about that term.
Boundary is a really big issue for people. Now, if you don't have strong boundaries in emotional situations, like in your personal relationships or in your business relationships or with your children, with your parents, whatever it is, anytime you feel like you want to say no but you can't, for whatever reason, because you're afraid. Now, keep in mind, Nancy, the only reason why you would ever, if you want to say no to someone, and you don't, the only reason why you don't do it is out of fear.
Right.
So every time you don't say no to somebody when you want to, you are registering a fear signal in your body. Either you're afraid your boss is going to get mad at you, your husband's not going to love you anymore, some abusive person is going to beat you or attack you, your children aren't going to listen to you or respect you, whatever the issue is. Then if you're not able to say no comfortably, then you don't have strong boundaries. Your body will use weight as a form of boundaries. Now, what we do in the Gabriel Method, and you can talk to your coach about this in your first meeting where this applies to you, we have certain visualizations where we work on feeling safe and strengthening our boundaries and feeling comfortable saying, look, I love you, but the answer is no, or no, I can't work this weekend, or whatever it is. Or even if you don't do that, at least reprogramming the association that somehow the fat is going to give you stronger boundaries. So we'd use another form of protection, like a column of white light. Sometimes we use these beautiful angel wings to protect you. All these visualizations are designed to make you feel safe and have strong boundaries without the weight. What you're doing is you're taking away this association that weight is somehow protecting you from not having the boundaries that you should be having. So that is probably one of the most pervasive issues that I've encountered. I had this issue myself, so I can recognize it very quickly. But if you do have that issue, that is first and has to get addressed. And once it is, the weight will come off very easily.
And I'm sure that a lot of people can identify with a lot of those stresses. And I actually think many people in the program have two or even more of these stresses in their lives right now.
I know me personally, almost everything I mentioned as a fat program trigger I had in one form or another. And then some. I didn't even talk about, for example, sleep apnea, which is a huge issue, which you'll talk to your coach about, and I'd like you to get tested for sleep apnea also. But I had so many of these issues, that's why I was able to identify them. So typically what happens is it starts with an emotional issue, like a trauma or some kind of life stress type of thing. From there, our digestion gets interrupted and we start craving more processed foods. So then we have a nutritional deficiency, and then we have excess toxins. That comes into play. And then all these artificial ingredients that we're eating kick our fat programs in. And then we start getting sick, so we go to the doctor and we take all these medications that are then causing both toxins, hormonal changes, and digestion problems in our body. And so the whole thing accelerates. Then you gain enough weight where you have sleep apnea, and that takes the whole thing to a whole nother level, because sleep apnea elevates your cortisol levels and activates your fat programs times 100. And so you've got this vicious cycle. And so what we're trying to do, what I do with myself and what I've done with thousands of people, and what we're trying to do in this case study, is unwind this vicious cycle systematically.
And it sounds like at least 80% of people who are trying to lose weight are affected by these stress effects. And so you've talked a little bit about how this works biologically. For program participants who are listening and who are not sure if stress in their lives is contributing to their weight problem, how do they know?
Okay, the answer is it is. It's a real simple answer. I don't care who you are.
Nothing magical there, right? It is.
It's a simple stress. I promise you, stress is affecting your life. And digestion issues apply to everyone. Stress applies to everyone. To a large extent, if you've had a lifetime of issues, or if you can trace your way to a specific time, then there's emotional, traumatic issues that are at play. And so most of these issues apply to most people in one form or another.
So it sounds like this is where your personal coach is going to help you tease out, what it is for you and what you need to do.
Exactly. That's the beauty of this program that we've put together, is that after you get off this call, you're going to understand that, hey, I got to turn off my fat programs. How do I do this? I'm going to give you some suggestions to follow that really apply to everybody over the month, but then you're going to get to talk to your coach, and you're going to get to really work through your specific issues, and that's where it's really beautiful. Like, I'll just give you an example. I've talked to so many thousands of people, and for a while, my home phone number was on the front page of my website. I used to get calls all day, and
wow,
I was really happy to do that. I really was. I'd be making dinner for my family, and all of a sudden I'd get in a call. I'm drive everyone crazy, but I just want to talk to as many people as possible. And I'm talking to this one guy from Melbourne, and I could just tell how labored his breathing is, that he had sleep apnea, because I had sleep apnea, and I had this kind of laboring kind of breathing, and he had all the signature type of things of sleep apnea, and he's telling me about what he eats and what he doesn't eat. And I said, I don't want to talk about what you eat and what you don't eat, or your good days or your bad days. I don't care about that. You get checked for sleep apnea. You get your sleep apnea taken care of, and then we'll talk. So he did that, and I didn't talk to him for 4 months, and it turned out he lost almost 100 pounds over that 4-month period, doing nothing else. And now, that's not going to be for everybody, but that's his issue. And because that was his issue, and we addressed his issue, then everything fell into place. And other times I talk to people, and I can tell that there was an abusive situation, and we handled the abusive situation right there on the spot, doing some sort of visualization, or they get some sort of specific counseling that I would direct them to, and then that's the issue, and then it's all gone. And once the issue's gone, you naturally crave healthier foods, your digestion improves, and everything creates a positive momentum.
Can you talk more about the specific visualizations and about the coaching sessions?
So when you have a coaching session, your coach is going to get some background from you. They're going to talk about your specific issues. And then at the end, they'll have like a 5 to 7 minute guided visualization. They'll also suggest to you one of the visualizations in our visualization library to listen to. Now, visualization is an incredibly effective way to communicate to your body. See, our bodies don't speak English. And you have to understand there's a part of our brain that's in charge of our fat programs. It's a part of our brain that's at the base of our skull that's the size of about a walnut.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in charge of everything that's going on inside our body. It's in charge of how much we should breathe, how much blood we should pump through our body, how much sleep we need, and how fat or thin we should be. These are not conscious things. You don't consciously have to think about how much you breathe or how much you sleep. Your body's going to tell you that. It's going to make the calculations and tell you that. And all that is taken care of in a really small part of our brain, the size of a walnut at the base of our skull. That part of our brain is in charge of how fat or thin we are. Now, it's a ancient part of our brain that doctors call the animal brain or the hypothalamus. And it doesn't speak English. Now, we've got this conscious part of our brain, this mental cerebral part of our brain that speaks English. That part of our brain doesn't speak to the animal brain, can't communicate to the animal brain. And one of our biggest challenges that we don't even know exists is that we don't know how to talk to our own brains. Right. So visualization, I've discovered, is an incredibly effective way to communicate to the consciousness of that animal brain because you're using symbols. When you can't speak to someone, when somebody doesn't speak your language, you have to talk in symbols. So if you're in a foreign country and you need to know where a bathroom is, for example, you can ask 1,000 people, where's the bathroom? Not one will tell you because they don't speak English. But if you draw a picture of a bathroom and show it to anybody, everybody will understand that and they will be able to show you. Symbols are the universal language for communicating with someone who doesn't speak your language. Now, the consciousness, our body consciousness, which is a consciousness and is in control of all of our body processes, doesn't speak English. We have to find a way to communicate. When you make a visual image of the way you would like to look, for example, your ideal weight, and you communicate that when you're in this mode I call smart mode, which is a highly receptive, focused, and concentrated state, it's like you're communicating with that subconscious, that consciousness, that animal consciousness, and your body understands that it doesn't need the fat programs, it doesn't need the weight as a form of protection, and it turns it off. Another really powerful way to use visualization is just to change different associations your body has. So if your body has the association that weight is important for survival, you make a visual image of this other form of protection, like a column of light, and then a visual image of you losing weight, and then you're in this column of light, and then you're going through your day and you're feeling safe and you're feeling protected. You've changed that association in your body, and your body consciousness is now hooking onto a different form of protection than weight. So you've changed that association. So visualization is really powerful that way. And what's also important as far as your brain, your animal consciousness is concerned, is it doesn't know the difference between a real and imagined experience. So when you imagine that you're in your ideal weight and you've got this other form of protection protecting you and you're feeling safe in a otherwise confronting situation, your body thinks it's actually happening and it reprograms its associations. And they've done so many studies with Olympic athletes where they visualize their ideal sport, and our neurons and muscle fibers are being fired in the same coordinated sequence as if we were actually doing the sport. You can use this, the fact that our bodies don't know the difference between a real and imagined experience, you can use this in visualization. You can also use visualization to create negative associations with foods that you want to get rid of, and we can talk about that down the road. There's so many ways that we use visualization, and the beauty of visualization also, Nancy, is it's like a muscle that gets stronger with use. So the more you practice visualization, and that's why we would just want you to do 5 or 10 minutes in the morning and then fall asleep listening to the visualizations at night. It's a real easy way to do it. But what happens is you become enormously powerful at visualizations, and then when you visualize your ideal weight or breaking any association you want, it happens instantly. And the other beautiful thing is, once you've developed this power and this strength in visualization, you can visualize yourself being successful in business, having the love of your life, having the ideal home situation, anything you want. You've developed a creative mechanism for transforming not only your body but your life as well.
Well, and to play the devil's advocate for a moment, what about participants who are listening now who have tried to relieve stress in their life and it just seems impossible for them, or they're kind of stuck?
Yeah, well, I find that stress is something that goes away over time through daily practice. And there's also chemical reasons for it. They've done studies, for example, with people that meditate. Now, our visualizations put you in a meditative state. And they've done studies where meditation over time starts to dull the signals to a part of our brain called the amygdala. Now, the amygdala is an almond shape. The other one was a walnut shape. This is an almond shaped part of our brain. Also, in the limbic part, which is an older brain part of us, that's the seat of fear and aggression. So anytime you feel unsafe, this part's getting triggered. And if you're chronically feeling unsafe, you're chronically triggering that part of you, and you're creating what's called a chronic stress response that's activating your fat programs. Visualization inhibits signals to that part of your brain. So you'll be standing in line at the bank, and normally you'll be stressed out because you only have 15 minutes and you got to get back to work. And what you'll find is you're not stressed out. You can't explain why you're not stressed out anymore, but then when you really think about it, you have to ask yourself, why was I ever stressed out? You were stressed out because of the way your brain chemistry was wired. Now your brain chemistry is wired differently. You're not stressed out in situations. That happens through daily practice over time. There's no substitute for it, and I can tell you, years down the road for me, my brain is wired so differently than it used to be that the stresses that I had before, they just don't play anymore. It just doesn't happen anymore, and it does work for everyone. That aspect of it definitely works for everyone because it's just chemical that your brain chemistry gets wired differently over time.
This is great information. Thank you so much, John. This concludes Action Steps Lesson 1.